to Take Note. I am Stephanie Malon-Rufi, and joining me today is Nan DeMars. Nan is an internationally recognized office expert. She has provided seminars and trainings for over 100,000 professional office employees. She is also the author of this book, You Want Me to Do What? Where, When, and How to Draw the Line at Work. She is a columnist for Office Pro magazine and also serves as the ethicist on WCCO Radio. Nan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely.
It's difficult to be an ethicist, and it's a word that is very difficult to even pronounce.
It is.
I trip over it all the time, but that is what I am. I'm an ethicist.
Well, great. Well, to get us started, why don't you just tell me what your definition is of office ethics, this topic that we're going to be discussing today?
Well, it's pretty simple, Stephanie. Ethics in the office, in the workplace ethics, which is the training I give, is just how people behave, how you treat each other in the office. And of course, the bottom line is always respect, but it's really how you interact and how you treat each other. That's really a very simple definition of workplace ethics. And employees have always dealt with ethical issues from day one, no matter what job they have, what position they have, whatever. And I think they get caught in ethical dilemmas almost every day. Hopefully not unethical ones, but some do.
Right.
But you have to make ethical decisions on different situations.
Right.
And in my training, I'm often asked, why do we need ethics training? Why do we, I'm ethical, you're ethical, we all come to the job ethical.
Right.
Well, it's true. Where do we get our ethics? We get them from our moms and our dads and our grandmothers and uncles and certainly teachers and priests and ministers. So as we grow up. But I believe strongly once you hit the workplace, you are absolutely off the playing field for two reasons. Number one, everybody has a boss. Even CEOs answer to boards.
True.
And number two, everybody needs their job. And when you have those two factors, you get caught sometimes in the center. So
well, why is it now, you're writing this book, obviously it's sold 50,000 copies, it's going into its third round of printing, this is a very popular topic. Why now is it so
My book was very timely, you're right. It was the beginning. Well, what really happened in the last 7-8 years, we've had a lot of corporate mischief that everybody is very aware of. We've had the crash of Enron, that's pretty obvious. We've had the meltdown of the largest accounting firm in the world, Arthur Andersen. You've got WorldCom, Tyco, all the other situations almost daily and weekly, and certainly we have a few here in the Twin Cities that are happening. So what has happened has been, we've always had ethical dilemmas and problems, but what truly has happened, I think, is that investors are really shaken. Their confidence has been shaken in corporate America. And secondly, employees' confidence in corporate America have also been shaken.
So that's really brought about this
It's
need
brought it to the
talk
fro,
more
and
about
people
that.
are talking about ethics, and they're really using the word ethics a lot. And, and so that's a part. So what really a major factor, I think, is one word, and that is trust. I run a lot of surveys through my website and through my work, and the number one concern really for employees is well over 60% of the employees will respond to me in other surveys I've read that they really worry about trust in the workplace.
Right.
And so I think that's really an answer to your question, why
ethics
ethics has come to the fore so much.
Well, and along those lines, I know that a lot of companies recently have been instituting what they call codes of ethics. And perhaps part of why they're doing that is because this trust, trying to restore some of that in the workplace. But could you tell me what the code of ethics is? How does it work? Is it effective? Is that the right way that companies should go about trying to instill some of that?
A code of ethics or a mission statement or whatever they're calling it, there are all kinds of terms, but it's mainly code of ethics, is really just a piece of paper unless everybody ascribes to it. But it's a start. And I think you're right. You could ask the question 10 years ago, did your company have a code of ethics? They probably didn't. They may have had a code of ethics, but it wasn't published, it wasn't printed, it wasn't on the wall of the office or the workplace when you walk in the company, and it wasn't on the annual reports or something. Now it's all of the above. And that is so important. I believe that 99% of the companies in the world today are very, very ethical. In fact, people ask me often, are you hired to go into a company and to give ethics training because they've had an unethical problem? It's just the reverse. I'm hired. They want to run an ethical establishment. They are running that, and they just hire me to reinforce so that everybody feels that way. So the codes of ethics are very important. It's a statement. It's what they really, truly believe in as a company. And it is showing up everywhere.
Sure.
And I think ethics training is sort of an extension of that, making sure that people really understand.
What it is. Now, I know that accountability is often a part of these codes of ethics, and that's a big issue. And could you talk a little bit about accountability?
Accountability is huge. In fact, I think that the #1 change in the workplace today for all employees at any level is that they must recognize that they have to be totally accountable for their own actions today, their own actions from the time they arrive in the job and they leave at night. And that's different from yesteryear, because I think there were circumstances in the past where people could always say, I call it the cop-out words, my boss told me to do it. And it doesn't work today.
It was accepted at that time.
It was totally accepted. In fact, we're secretaries and administrative professionals, which I deal with a lot. It was almost accepted to, they had to fall on their swords and take the darts for their bosses. And, you could put any excuse in the world and you could blame your assistant for it, but that isn't true today. That you have to be totally accountable for who you are today and what you do. Nobody in the workplace has immunity.
Do you have an example of that?
Well, I think maybe a good one would be, what do you do if your boss asks, or somebody, but let's make it your boss, somebody with more power than you, asks you to lie for them? And I don't think anybody today, at least I hope not, will outrightly ask you, Stephanie, to lie for them. But it's kind of like, what I teach is they kind of may couch the issue. They'll go all around the issue, but you really know you're being asked to lie. So my best response to that, whatever it is, any unethical request, is to put it right back in their lap, reel it back like a video reel, and say, in other words, Stephanie, you wish me to lie for you? Or in other words, Susan, you want me to change these figures for the board meeting or something? Because you're pointing out a couple of things. You're pointing out you know exactly what you're being asked to do. And secondly, they now know you know exactly what, and they probably will back off and say, no, I didn't mean that. But if they still press on, and it happens, and say, yes, I want you to do that, then there are so many ways to say no.
To say no, right.
But there's only one reason to give. And the reason is because I may have to be held accountable. That will stop anybody up short. No one can argue that point.
And along those lines, when you're talking about the employee, what are the ethical priorities? What do you consider the priorities for employees in today's workplace?
Well, I call it my signature. It's the ethical priority compass. And it's just 3 points. It's the first one, the most important one, is you take care of yourself. Because nobody else is going to take care of you today. You have to completely take care of yourself. You have to protect yourself from emotional harm, financial harm, illegal harm, any kind of harm, really.
Right.
And you take care of yourself, because you may be in that courtroom all by yourself.
So that's number one, and it ranks number one.
It ranks number one, and a caveat under that, Stephanie, would be you also have to get up in the morning and look in the mirror. So you have to stay true to your own morals and standards. That's number one. Number two, take care of your company, whatever establishment you work for. They give you a paycheck. You certainly owe your loyalties to them. And number three is your boss. But your boss is third down the line.
I see.
Because your boss has, you have to protect give all your professionalism to your boss, certainly, and your confidentiality and everything. But it's no longer the blind loyalty or the blind allegiance of yesteryear. And a great example of that one, and I just learned about it. This is a huge company in our country, and I won't name the company, but this executive assistant came to work one morning, and her boss was a senior vice president. And she learned that morning that her boss, they had had an emergency board meeting the night before, and her boss came to work, and he's been fired. And she was told the same time he was. The two of them were told together. And she wasn't fired, but he was.
Right.
And so he had until noon to clean out his office. So he, which is very appropriate, asked his assistant would you help me clean out my office? Well, she did. All morning long, they cleaned out the office together, but they also shredded. They did a lot of shredding. She did a lot of shredding at his bequest. And as he was ushered out the door, so was she. And that goes right back to my ethical priority compass. She works for the company, and she should always stay focused on that.
And along the lines of it's not accepted anymore that you could say he asked me to do it.
Exactly, because with secretaries, the old-fashioned word secretary, although many people proudly still use that title, it comes from the Latin word which meant protectorate, and the French word, I believe, that means confidant. So you're so used to protecting and keeping confidences for your boss that it was just built right in there. So you're used to doing that, and sometimes it's a slippery slope because you can slide slowly into it, and sometimes when we wake up in bed in the middle of the night and we say, oh, wait a minute, that's when we get our biggest revelations.
Right.
I'm helping my boss. My boss is clearly doing something maybe illegal, much less unethical, and I'm helping him or her. Now you better go back up the compass and take care of yourself because you're aware of it, and then you better protect the company.
Let's, along those lines, can we talk a little bit about some national headlines?
Oh, wow.
Some that I'm sure everyone watching has probably heard of these cases. To start with, the Martha Stewart case.
Oh,
can you talk about this issue in relation to her situation?
Well, we're all very aware that Martha's souffle was falling at a period of time there when she was under her trial. But what I was watching most specifically, and which actually carried out exactly like unfolded the way I thought it was going to, unfortunately, Martha's broker at Merrill Lynch, he had a young, it doesn't matter what age the person is, but he was a young man, his executive assistant. And he was asked when the investigation began three major questions on, were you, and it was, I think the date was December 26th, the day she sold her stock. Did you place a call to Miss Stewart that day? Did your boss, her broker, call Miss Stewart that day? Or did your boss just ask you to place a call? He answered no to all three questions. When the investigation began, he totally flipped his story and he said he lied. And he ended up the government's star witness against his boss and his boss's biggest client, Martha. And his now, albeit he was a very reluctant witness, but he was the government star witness. His testimony alone brought them both down.
Wow.
And here, now he is through in the industry too, and I believe he can never get a job again in the investment world.
Sure.
So, but how different his life would have been had he stepped up to the plate and said, no, I will not lie for you. At least it may not have stopped either her broker or Martha for doing whatever they did, but it was the cover-up that brought them down.
Right.
Why is it always the cover-up that brings them down? So that was a huge example, and a very good one, of a national situation.
I think maybe can you also talk about a couple other cases? One of the ones I'm thinking of is Betty Curry, who was the assistant to President Clinton during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. A lot of people don't think about her or what happened to her in that situation. They're so fixated on the whole scandal of it all. So could you talk about what happened there with Betty Curry?
Thank you for asking me that, because I haven't been asked that for a while. She was a huge focus on the, in fact, a day or two after the scandal all erupted, whatever, I believe she walked across the street and testified. She's testified many times, but she ended up having to be, because she was there. She hadn't done anything wrong, but she was there. Interestingly, Stephanie, I sent her a book, and I sent her a letter of advice at that time, and my letter of advice was my ethical priority compass. And I told her that I was sure that her, in this crisis, she should take care of herself, and then as far as company, I said, in your case, the United States government, and then thirdly, your boss, the President Clinton, and I'm sure the President would want you to do the same. And she sent me the most beautiful letter and said, you're absolutely right. And she said the President would want me to do the same. So, but Monica Lewinsky was never my issue that I ever wrote about or talked about in interviews. It was always Betty, because she was there, and she was right in the middle, and she saw things happen, and and she was very much caught. The other one would be the Enron secretaries. Many of them had to testify in the trial. They were completely innocent, but they had to testify, and they found themselves right there. And if we really want to go far back on the national scene, we can go to Fawn Hall, Colonel Oliver North's assistant, who ended up having that very snowy, cold day in Washington, D.C., when he cleaned out his office, he had her do a lot of shredding and smuggling documents out of the office.
Right.
And she got immunity in the trial, but she was very, very lucky, because today she would not
She wouldn't have gotten immunity today. Huh.
No, you wouldn't, so.
Right, right. Maybe we'll switch gears a minute and talk about some everyday workplace situations that our viewers probably might be facing. To begin with, the topic of workplace romance.
Oh, I love that topic.
I know that in 2006, a survey showed that at least 40% of office employees have engaged in office romance at one time or another. So,
and 60% have witnessed it. I asked that question
really?
for my seminars, and I'd like to say office romance is on the rise, and I think that's a good thing, because once you get out of school, where do you meet your mate? It's probably going to be
That's where
in
you're
the
spending
workplace.
a lot of your waking hours. Exactly.
Better place than in a bar somewhere.
That's right.
So it's on the rise. I ask the question often in my seminars. How many of you have, like you said, been involved in a workplace romance, but have also, or have witnessed it, and it's well over 60% say yes, they have.
They've seen that.
And you know, you can't legislate romance, and you can't kill Cupid, and people are working together and have the same jobs. Men have the same jobs as women today. There are lots of reasons why it's on the rise. And also, everybody looks good. You know, you're not in your grubbies. You come to work looking pretty good, and you have a lot of camaraderie and sometimes long hours. And so romance blossomed. But where the real problem is, and companies are putting it right into their handbooks now, I call it the triple R, the reporting romantic relationship. If it's a direct report, you have big-time potential problems.
So if you're in a relationship with a direct report, someone who you have more authority over, I see. And
that's where the potential lawsuits are coming. And the lawsuits are coming out of them, too, because of under the harassment situation. So now companies are putting it right in their handbooks that it is totally verboten to be involved with somebody on a direct reporting basis. And that's a good thing. I think because of all the ethics training and people being finally really concerned with this topic, employee handbooks are really getting chubby. They're getting expanding very well. But it's really good because employees need a blueprint. They need to know what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable in the workplace. So it is important.
Great.
So that's a great, great topic. There was another thing. I think that what I wanted to mention is that I have what I call the 3 C's of the ethical workplace or the ethical office, whatever. And the first one is obviously, it's a corporate conscience, you know, it's an understanding, and that's what you were mentioning about the code of ethics and what's acceptable and what isn't. And then it's a commitment to hold everybody accountable. And then the third one, it is an ongoing system of communication that you feel very comfortable when you have a problem, that you know who to go to, you know who to talk to, and at least you can talk about these issues and bring them up. I was going to mention Senator Paul Wellstone. There were 2 politicians who said the same thing to me. One was Sally Howard. She worked with my husband Lou as a city council person many years ago. Sally was a very good Republican. Lou was a Democrat. They worked together beautifully.
Got along well.
They got along very well. And those were the good old days. And but Sally said the same thing to me, used the same words, and then Senator Wellstone, 1 week before he died, he came up to me. I saw him on the campaign trail, and he knew what I did, and he was always excited about what I did. And he said, Nan, ethics, you know, he was so excitable. Nan, ethics, it's where we are today. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing your training. And then he said, you know, I've never told you this. And I always thought it was so interesting that he told this to me 1 week before he unfortunately died in the plane crash. And he said, I never told you, but I have every single employee I hire, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or in my St. Paul office, I sit down with them and I have my puffed with importance conversation. The same words that Sally Howard used.
Puffed with importance?
Puffed with importance of my job. He said, after all, I'm a U.S. Senator. And I sit down with them and I say, you know, I might get start thinking I'm pretty hot stuff. So we're running so fast-paced out here. We've got so many projects, so many things we're working on, that I might start sliding off, and he knew my compass. I might start sliding off, Nan, your ethical priority compass, and sliding off my moral compass, too, just to get the job done. And after all, I am a U.S. Senator, so I can do anything I want. And he said, but if you see that happening, he's telling each new employee that, I want you to interrupt me at any time of the day, come in with a cup of coffee, and you sit down and you say, Paul, we've got a real problem. And you shore me up. And what he used, his words were, he said, I told every employee, I want you to be my monitor. Isn't that a great word?
It is.
And I want, if you see that happening, I want you to come in and say, we've got to talk about this. And that's my dream. If every single employer today would have that relationship with the people that support them or work with them, we'd be so far ahead of the game.
Wow, it's a great story.
It's a fun story.
Yeah,
it's a nice memory of him. It'll be forever a nice memory of Paul. He would be quite a. I wonder what he'd be doing right now in Washington, D.C.
What would be happening?
He'd be talking a lot about his pup with importance statement, I think.
Exactly. Now, before I give you an opportunity to kind of close and say your final words on this topic, could you just give me briefly an example of what happens in your seminars and trainings? Just quickly, just tell me so that people are interested in having you come to their workplace, what exactly it is that you do.
Well, they can certainly find me on my website.
Yes, which is www.office-ethics.com.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
By memory. And but what companies of all sizes hire me to come in, and many companies hire me just to do a lot of keynoting to conferences, to the importance of ethics and why
a speech
and why it's important to talk to your employees about it, and then I can bring up all the different issues, the confidentiality issues and whatever. So, but my workshops are very interactive, and they're a lot of fun too, because it's one thing to look at your ethics training by your many companies today, which is wonderful, are doing a lot of ethics training on the web. They'll just, employee will sit down in front of their computer and answer questions and and that's excellent. But what I do is get them into groups and give them a case, and then they start arguing. And if you have 8 to 10 people, even if you have 2 people talking about a certain case, you will get 2 different views, you'll get 8 different views, and they come down in the right answer, but the interaction is what really, I think, makes it extremely
and
important.
It seems like it would also help employees to understand what their priorities should be in the workplace and how to handle the situations that might be uncomfortable and might lead them down the wrong path.
Absolutely. And
That's great.
Started out, Stephanie, with having just administrative support professionals, secretaries and all, and then it expanded. Now I've been doing so many managers. I love it when they're all together. And then I've even had certainly officers and even CEOs in sessions, and they're a lot of fun. They're really, the interaction is a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Well, Nan, I know you have a few things you'd like to just say in closing when you're kind of summing up this
so much to talk about. I would like to say that the ethical office works. It really works. It's a stable office. People stay. It's a predictable office. You're not blindsided by lawsuits. It's a confidential office. I talk a lot in my seminars about confidentiality and how important it is to keep those confidences on the job, whatever the topic is. It's a communicative one. People talk if they have a problem. In fact, if you have a son or a daughter that's in college right now, tell them to study ethics. Ethics directors are rising all over the place, ethics managers. So all of that is important to know. It does definitely work. But my compass, I would like to give people at least that's, to emphasize my ethical priority compass, those 3 points. And then to remember it's a very slippery slope, because if you start worrying about things or sliding off the ethical compass and you all of a sudden realize you're involved in something, it can be a very slow thing that happens. But when you do find out that you're suddenly involved in something clearly unethical, Hubert Humphrey said once, I wondered why nobody was doing anything. Then I realized I wondered why somebody wasn't doing something. Then I realized I was somebody. So, and there's another great quote, Stephanie, that I love. if you start to lower your standards, or you think, you start thinking, well, why don't I lower my standards? Because why don't I take the Scotch tape home from the office, or why don't I steal a dictionary or something?
Because everybody's minor. It's not everybody's doing it, right?
Everybody's doing it. That's the answer a lot. Or why don't I cheat on my time card or something? That is so dangerous, Stephanie, because, well, the Cowboys said it pretty good in Lonesome Dove when they said if you hang long enough, you get used to hanging. But I think these words are even more powerful. There are 5 words from the German philosopher Goethe, and they're frightening words, but they're powerful words. You become what you tolerate, and you don't deserve to be there. No one deserves to be there.
Wonderful. Well, Nan, I just thank you. This has been just a enriched discussion, and I think it's given our viewers a lot to think about. Of course, there's much more we could talk about in this topic.
Always.
But I encourage, if you want to get Nan's book, or if you are interested in having Nan come speak at your workplace, you can also hear her on WCCO radio. Probably the best thing to do would be to go to your website, and that's where they can get all the information and how to contact Nan. And again, her website is www.office-ethics.com. Nan, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Stephanie, for having me.
Absolutely.